Hello, and welcome to the Right Building Blocks, the podcast where we break down the strategies behind some of the world's most successful companies. I'm your host, Gilles, and today we're diving into Lululemon, often called the community champion of athleisure. You might know them from their high quality yoga pants, sleek running gear, or innovative fabrics. And if you're in Belgium, you might have noticed their arrival. In June 2025, they opened their first shops in Brussels and Antwerp. In this episode, we'll explore Lululemon's playbook through two lenses: the business model canvas to understand how they build a brand that feels more like a movement than a retailer, and the bow tie funnel to see how they systematically turn shoppers into loyal advocates. And when we get into the bow tie, we'll go deeper on the role of the customer experience using Brian Chesky's 11-star experience and the service profit chain to benchmark how Lululemon actually feels to its customer and why that matters for growth. By the end, you'll see how Lululemon turned yoga pants into a global movement, why customer experience is central to its success, and what lessons every B2C brand can take away. So let's get started. Lululemon was founded in 1998 by Chip Wilson in Vancouver, Canada. At the time, yoga was gaining popularity, especially among women, but the apparel options were poor. Imagine cotton leggings sagging after a few wears, soaking up sweat, and frankly, not stylish. Wilson spotted the opportunity to create technical gear designed specifically for yoga, using fabrics that stretched, wicked away sweat, and still looked good outside the studio. The first standalone store opened in 2000 in Vancouver, Kitsilano neighborhood. And here's a fun detail: the space doubled as a yoga studio by day and a retail shop by night, a perfect blend of community and commerce. Even the name and logo have quirks. Lululemon doesn't have a deep meaning. Wilson picked it partially because he liked how the multiple L's sounded in Western branding. You know, the logo with the red circle and the stylized white swoosh, almost like the Greek omega, was actually designed for another brand. But it stuck. Today, it's instantly recognizable worldwide. From the start, Lululemon wasn't just selling clothes, it was solving a gap in the market. High quality, fashionable, technical gear for a new lifestyle that mixed fitness and everyday life. That niche would eventually explode into the global athleisure movement. But Lululemon's story isn't all smooth sailing. Chip Wilson, the founder, made some early mistakes that nearly cost the brand's credibility. He was outspoken, sometimes too outspoken. In 2013, after a recall of see through yoga pants, Wilson publicly suggested the problem wasn't with the product, but with woman's body. That statement triggered outrage. Sales took a hit, and the brand had to fight to regain trust. Wilson eventually stepped down as a chairman, and Lululemon doubled down on culture values and customer focus. Ironically, those early PR missteps taught them a lesson: brand trust is fragile and community is everything. Now that we know the backstory, let's break down the architecture behind Lululemon using the business model canvas. And here's the thing: the canvas isn't just boxes on a slide, it's a way to understand the choices a company makes, who they serve, what they promise, how they deliver, and why it works. So let's walk through the 9 building blocks. And as we go, ask yourself, what would you have chosen if you were in Lululemon's shoes? If you missed previous episode, you may be wondering, why the hell is he using Lego bricks to explain business strategy? Well, I use Lego blocks to bring the business model canvas to life because each block represents a building element of the business: customer segments, value propositions, channels, resources, and so on. And just like in strategy, you don't build everything at once. You start small, test, rearrange, and keep iterating. Lego makes the canvas tangible. You can literally see how pieces connect, where the structure is strong, and where the gaps are. Most importantly, it shows that a business model is never static. It's something that you can take apart and rebuild as the company grows. Great. Let's start with the first question. Who exactly is this brand for? Lululemon began with laser focus: women practicing yoga in Vancouver. Not everyone, not every sport, just a niche that was growing but underserved. By starting narrow, they built credibility. And only once they had trust there, then they expanded into menswear, into new categories, and eventually into new geographies. It's a reminder: sometimes the smartest strategy is not to go big, but to go deep. And once you know who you serve, the next logical question is, what are you promising them? So, what's the promise? Lululemon never set out to sell just leggings. They offered something much bigger: high performance fabric that felt unique, designs that looked stylish, and a lifestyle that signaled wellness and community. By charging premium price, they weren't just covering cost, they were reinforcing exclusivity. When customers bought Lululemon, they weren't buying clothes, they were buying belonging. But how do you actually deliver that kind of promise? You need the right channels to make it happen. Here's where another unusual choice comes in. Most apparel brands scale quickly by going wholesale, selling through department stores or distributors. Lululemon refused. They chose to stay direct to consumer and building their own stores and later their own digital platform. Why? Because controlling the channel meant controlling the experience. Stores weren't just shops, they became community hubs. With yoga classes, events, and trained staff or educators who explained fabrics and built trust. And digitally, the experience was seamless. You buy online, you pick up in the store, they ship from store, return anywhere. No boundaries between physical and digital. And once you build these channels, the question becomes, how do you keep those customer relationships alive and strong? This is where Lululemon made a bold bet: invest in people, not ads. Instead of billion-dollar marketing budgets, they poured money into well-trained educators in their stores, creating a high-touch, personalized experience. At the same time, they built an ambassador network: thousands of local yoga instructors and trainers who wore the product authentically in their own community. And with membership programs offering early product access and exclusive events, customers weren't just buyers, they were participants in a lifestyle movement. So relationships run deep, but of course, every business has to answer the hard question: how does the money actually come in? For Lululemon, revenue is built on a simple but powerful engine: full price sales. Where many retailers chase volume with discounts, Lululemon did the opposite: scarcity, limited runs, and premium pricing. If you don't buy now, it might not be there next week. That strategy gave them some of the highest margins in the industry. And strategically, they've set clear growth bet. Double men, double digital, and quadruple international sales by 2026. Ambitious? Absolutely. But rooted in the same premium full price philosophy. We'll discuss that plan in detail with the bow tie. But sustaining that kind of model isn't just about revenue. You need the right resources to back it up. On paper, the balance sheet looks healthy. Billions in revenue, strong cash reserves, almost no debt. But the most important resources don't appear on the balance sheet. We've singled out four. The brand itself, valued at nearly 5 billion. The design culture, teams constantly innovating with own fabrics. 3. The complete network of stores and digital platforms. And 4, and perhaps most importantly, the people. 29,000 employees and 1,700 ambassadors, all reinforcing the brand every day. And having resources is one thing, but what do you actually do with them? That's where activities come in. Day to day, Lululemon focuses on a handful crucial activities. Product innovation is constant. New fabrics, new categories, new design. Running stores as a community hub is another. Community events, digital content, and an ambassador program all feeds into storytelling. And behind the scenes, supply chain management and inventory systems ensure the online and in-store seamlessly connect. In other words, every activity is chosen to either strengthen the brand, improve the product, or deepen the community. Of course, no company acts in isolation. So who helped them deliver on all of this? Lululemon doesn't own its factory, neither their shops. Instead, it partners with a carefully selected network of manufacturers in Asia, ensuring quality and flexibility. Partnerships also extend into branding, from outfitting Team Canada at the Olympics to working with fitness studios and local influencers. The guiding principle? Partnerships must align with the brand's value and enhance the credibility. And finally, let's ask, how do all of these choices show up in the cost structure? Lululemon spends differently than most apparel companies. The biggest costs are in places that reinforce differentiation. Retail operations, well-paid educators, R&D for fabrics, and a global logistics system. Marketing, in contrast, is lean. No billion-dollar ad spends, no flashy endorsements. Word of mouth and grassroots advocacy carry much of the weight. That choice produced some of the healthiest financials in the industry. Gross margins are close to 60% and operating margin around 24%. For retail, that's almost unheard of. So when you zoom out, you see a company built on a series of deliberate trade-offs. Narrow segments before expansion, premium over discount, community over mass, direct channels over wholesales. Each choice reinforces the others, creating a brand that feels less like a clothing company and more like a movement. Instead of scaling fast and abroad, Lululemon scaled deep, creating loyalty, protecting pricing power, and building a brand that feels almost cult-like. That's the hidden architecture inside their business model canvas. Now let's move from architecture to execution. Lululemon isn't a yoga brand anymore. In 2022, they set a bold challenge. Double revenue from 21 levels and hit 12.5 billion by 2026. How do you achieve something that ambitious? They call it the power of 3 by 2. Double men's, double digital, quadruple international. All powered by 3 pillars: product innovation, guest experience, and market expansion. But how does that high level strategy actually translate into growth step by step? That's where the bow tie framework helps us unpack the journey. So let's start on the left side of the bow tie. How do people first hear about Lululemon today? Not through splashy ads or celebrity endorsement. Instead, Lululemon bets on something far more powerful: community, credibility. Ambassadors like yoga teachers, runners, fitness coaches, they all wear and recommend the product. Programs like the Sweat Collective seed apparel into the hands of the influential leaders who then introduce the brand to their students. It's grassroots, but it scales. And what about the international growth? Here's the challenge. How do you plant the brand in market where people don't yet associate yoga pants with Lululemon? The answer is focused investment. Lululemon didn't just ship products overseas and hope for the best. They opened flagship stores in key global cities: Shanghai, London, Paris, and recently Brussels and Antwerp, to act as brand beacons. So they localized assortments to fit cultural preferences, invested in community events like run clubs, yoga sessions, and then built ambassador networks with local trainers and athletes. In short, they exported not just the clothes, but also the culture. Once you've got someone's attention, you turn curiosity into the first wow moment. Once you got someone's attention, how do you turn curiosity into that first wow moment? For Lululemon, activation is all about experience. You walk into a store and you get greeted not by a sales clerk, but by an educator who helps you find the perfect fit. They will even hem your pants for free. And online, the app onboards you with recommendations and nudges. And then there's membership. The free essential tier offers early access and perks, lowering the barrier to entry. And then they have the paid studio tier that takes it further, connecting content and workouts directly to the apparel you are wearing. The result? That first purchase doesn't feel transactional, it feels like joining a lifestyle. Now, the big question: how does Lululemon turn great first impressions into real revenue? The answer lies in staying premium and direct to consumer. Without wholesale middlemen, margins are healthy. Then, they drive higher basket sizes by encouraging full outfits, such as leggings, tops, accessories, and even footwear. And with personalization, the app and the website guide you towards what complements your wardrobe. Think of it as a digital educator. At the international level, stores mature quickly. Once the community is established, the economics improve and sales per store climb. But revenue is only half of the story. The real test is, how do you make sure people come back? This is where Lululemon shines. Memberships create habit loops. You come for the perks, you stay for the content. Free hemming and high quality fabrics build trust in the brand. And with Like New, the trade-in program, customers can recycle old gear for credits, keeping them in the ecosystem while reinforcing the brand's sustainability story. Retention here isn't passive, it's engineered. For companies like Lululemon, customer experience is front and center. So let's bring in our customer experience lens. How does it actually feel to be a Lululemon customer? Let's start with the 11-star experience, a concept from Airbnb's Brian Chesky. A 5-star experience meets expectation. You buy, the product works, and you're satisfied. A 7-star experience goes further. The brand surprises you, delights you, makes you feel special. And an 11-star experience? That is so extraordinary that you can't help but tell everyone about it. So, how does Lululemon measure up? Customer feedback shows they consistently deliver in the 7 to 9-star zone. Stores with educators who act more like personal stylists than salespeople, free hemming that feels like a boutique perk inside a sportswear shop, fabric quality that lives up to the hype. Customers rave that nothing feels the same. Membership perks that feel like insiders' access, not gimmicks. But they haven't cracked the 11-star level yet. Some customers get frustrated by limited inventory drops, high prices, or less personalization compared to digital-first rivals. In those moments, the brand slips back to a just fine, 5 to 6-star level. The magic of Lululemon is that they've engineered experiences that usually go beyond expectations. The challenge, especially as they scale globally, is how do you keep delivering 9s and 10s when more customers are walking through the door every day? The answer is investment. Lululemon bets that by doubling down on experience and community, they can scale without losing their edge. So, is it really worth pouring that much into customer experience and ambassadors? According to Harvard's service profit chain, the answer is yes. Here's the logic. Great support inside the company creates happy, engaged employees. Happy employees deliver better service. Better service creates loyal customers. And loyalty drives growth and profit. That's why Lululemon puts money into educators and ambassadors instead of million-dollar ad campaigns. They're the first link in the chain. When they're motivated and trained, the customer experience improves. And when the experience improves, so do margins and loyalty. And once customers are happy and loyal, the next question is, how do you grow that relationship even further? That's where expansion comes in. A woman who started with yoga leggings might next buy training gears or tennis apparel. And a man who discovered ABC pants could build out his entire wardrobe. And footwear is the new anchor. Once you trust Lululemon for clothing, why not lace up their running shoes too? And don't forget global expansion. Every new store abroad doesn't just add sales, it reinforces Lululemon's consistency as a global lifestyle brand. Finally, the last part of the bow tie: how do you turn customers into marketeers? For Lululemon, advocacy is baked in. Ambassadors don't just promote, they co-create products, host classes, and generate authentic word of mouth. Events become social contents, fueling organic buzz. Even sustainability programs like their Like New campaign sparks conversation that spread the brand's reputation further. And that's the power of Lululemon's bow tie. Every stage, from awareness to advocacy, reinforces the next, creating a loop that fuels growth. So, where does that leave them today? And what's the outlook? According to their investor reports, by fiscal year 2024, Lululemon reached 10.6 billion in revenue and are on track for their 11.30 in fiscal year 2025. In the first quarter of 2025, international revenue grew to approximately 20% year on year. Margins remain strong with gross margins around 60%. The digital and men's business specifics aren't published as of today, but the KPI for men and international remain key growth drivers. The power of 3 by 2 turns into a growth engine that loops back on itself. Acquire through community and new categories, activate with frictionless omni experience, monetize with premium direct to consumer, retain with membership and quality, expand across geographies and categories, and finally, turn guests into advocates who fuel the loop again. But there's a challenge. Here's the thing. Even strong brands face headwinds. In 2025, Lululemon reported a market share drop for the first time in over a decade. With a loss of 45% of its capitalization, I invite you to read the full story, but it basically comes down, in my opinion, to investors overacting as always. They see problem in stagnating growth in North America and China, but they don't see the growth in Europe. Q2 revenue was indeed a bit lower than expected. 2.53 billion instead of 2.54 billion. And yes, management also saw problems for the rest of the year. The CFO mentioned the Trump import duties and the removal of the free entrance of small packages, the so-called de minimis provisions. The CEO, on the other hand, saw the problem more in product innovation. Product life cycles are too long, new products are too predictable, and to regain its US momentum, the CEO said the company plans to increase its new styles from 23% of its overall assortment to 35% next spring and improve its fast track design capabilities. But Lululemon will not make any short term decision that could hurt or damage the brand in the long term. Competition in athleisure has also intensified, from Nike doubling down on women, to Alo Yoga and Vuori pulling younger trend-driven shoppers, to budget-friendly brands like H&M and Uniqlo capturing value-conscious customers. So what does that mean? It shows that while the power of 3 by 2 has fueled incredible growth, the next phase requires Lululemon to defend its leadership position. Product innovation, international expansion, and community credibility will be tested against fiercer rivals. I think we can take a lesson from this. Even the best engine eventually face friction. The real question is whether Lululemon can keep reinventing itself fast enough. Bringing it all to a conclusion. Lululemon's business model canvas reminds us to start narrow, go deep, and let the community be the base before expanding. The bow tie funnel shows that growth comes from designing every stage of the journey, not just getting customers in, but guiding them towards loyalty and advocacy. That customer experience lens we used teaches us that employees are the real differentiator. If you invest in them, they'll deliver experiences that keep customers coming back. So the key takeaway is clear. Sustainable growth isn't only about chasing more customers. It's about building trust, deepening relationships, and turning customers into fans who grow the brand for you. That wraps up our deep dive into Lululemon. If you're building a brand, remember, every touchpoint matters. Execute deliberately, measure carefully, and scale thoughtfully. Thank you for listening to The Right Building Blocks. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe, share, or leave a review. We'll be back soon with another company breakdown and actionable insights for any managers, founders, or brand leaders. Until then, keep building, keep innovating, and keep delighting your customers.